Maurice Nicol's Psychological Commentary, Volume 5, Amwell, Whitson, May 23rd, 1953. The Prison of Negative Emotions. In esoteric teaching, we're always told that we are in prison. No one sees the prison. To the sensual mind, a prison must have walls and bolts and bars. The prison we are in has none. It is chiefly made of states. In the work, we study them. All wrong emotions keep us in prison. There are many degrees of negative emotions, just as there are degrees of hell. The change from non-negative to negative emotions is as definite as a chemical change from alkaline to acid. We get to know this eventually when we realize we're in prison. Negative emotions seem far cleverer than non-negative emotions. They seem more fertile, more interesting, more ingenious. This is because they lie. Like all liars, they try to persuade you. The object of negative emotions is not only to destroy truth, but to harm. All evil seeks to harm. It is extraordinarily easy to harm. We do not easily know how to do good to others, but we easily know how to hurt them. There is a distinct pleasure in harming. Consider the pleasure of scandal. At the root of negative emotions lies violence. There are degrees of negative emotions, both continuous and discontinuous degrees. A particular negative state may increase or diminish, or it may deepen and become dangerous. A discipline is needed in regard to negative emotions. It must begin with self-observation. You must know and acknowledge when you are negative. People will not do this. A discipline should never become an end in itself. It is a means to an end. The discipline bearing on negative states has as its end the gradual weakening of their power to imprison us. It is part of the general technique of the work, which is about escaping from prison. It is necessary to find and invent every method you can to prevent recurring events from making you negative. It is not a matter of armor, but of self-knowledge, and coupled with an adroitness similar to that shown by the Syrophoenician woman in the answer she gave when she was compared to a dog. She did not get negative. When she asked Christ to heal her daughter, he said, "Let the children first be filled, for it is not to me to take children's bread and to cast it unto the dogs." And she answered and said unto him, "Yes, Lord, the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." And he said unto her, "For this saying, go thy way. The devil is gone out of thy daughter." That's from Mark 7:27 through 29. The work teaches that negative emotions govern the world. They are extremely infectious. One man can make 1,000 negative. One negative person can turn a house into a hell. This ability to affect others gives the negative person a sense of power. It is an evil power. Negative emotion seems to destroy a sense of humor in people. I read that Grimm's fairy tales are being rewritten. The good fairy is described as a deviationist. Can you genuinely laugh if you're negative? Not at yourself, at any rate. Perhaps we never really laugh at ourselves, but pretend. Most of us, life is persistence. And even if we half know it, we take it seriously. For there is some invisible binding force that gets mixed up with everything that we do, like a cord that we should have cut through a long time ago with a sharp knife. The work calls the effect of this uncut cord identifying. Being identified is the source of negative emotions. Here you are, for example, as pleased as Punch with something like that you have just made, mixing yourself with the job and the job with yourself. And then some idiot goes and lights a fire with it. You would have to be very adroit to prevent yourself from becoming negative. But if you had been awake, you would have observed how you were identifying while doing the job that would have helped you not to react so negatively. If you never identified, you would not mix what should not be mixed with what you do and what you would not be negative. If you always remembered yourself, you would never identify. And if you never identified, you would never be negative. This simply means that if we lived at the level of the third state of consciousness, we should never identify and would never be negative. But man is asleep. People live in the second state of consciousness, this so-called waking state, and do not know that this is the prison house in which they unknowingly live, perhaps rather puzzled by what happens, but not seeing the cause of it all. Thinking in this active way about the life from what the work teaches instead of the other way around, you can see that to struggle piecemeal with this or that negative emotion is like trying to deal with a newspaper in a gale of wind. In the atmosphere surrounding the earth above a certain altitude, there are no storms. It is the same with us. If you could reach the altitude of consciousness belonging to the state of self-remembering, self-consciousness, self-awareness, you would be traveling above the inevitable and natural storms that belong to the lower level of consciousness. To be negative is to sin against the work. It is to miss the mark. Do you feel this? You can, and indeed you must find and invent for yourself ways of circumventing negative emotions. To find something that requires directed attention is one way, if you can bring yourself to do it. Another is to remember and recall and go back in time to similar previous occasions, provided you've got work memory based on genuine self-observation and not merely the usual illusory lying memory. Watching the state is always useful, if you can, without joining it. Another way is to see what made you negative, if you can. Efforts of this kind make you more conscious, and that always helps people because it helps you, because it puts you, better parts of you, in your centers, in less slummy places in the inner city of yourself. One has to feel that one is wrong if one is negative and really feeling it, not because you were told, but because you see it for yourself. Without this feeling, all you do will be useless and meretricious and artificial. The true way is out of self-remembering.